Hi, welcome everybody. My name's Dave Small. I'm Vice President of Sales at Datagaps. I want to welcome all of you. We have an exciting day today, a lot of great topics. Looking forward to going through the agenda and hopefully you guys get a lot out of this event. This is our first event on trusted data. So I'd like to thank not only everybody that's attending, but also our customers and our partners and the industry analysts that are speaking at this. They have a lot of wealth of information and experience in trusted data. I'm sure you'll take home some ideas that you can implement in your workday. The idea behind this actually came about a year ago, where we were starting to field a lot of questions at Datagaps about, how can we improve the data journey? How can we increase the trust in data in our organization? In almost every case, the questions were around the same type of things that they had in common. How can I reduce the cost of manual testing, but at the same time be able to test more through an automated means? How can I also test the critical data entering my enterprise and the critical data that I'm making important decisions on? And then also, how can I do end-to-end testing from the point of ingestion through the transformations, through enrichments, and all the way through data movement, and then all the way to consumption in my data analytics platform. So people were wanting to figure out how to manage that overall data pipeline. So in an age where information shapes global technologies, the importance of trust in the data we generate, consume, and act upon cannot be overstated. It's clear that data is not just a commodity, it's a catalyst for change. It empowers businesses to make informed decisions, fuels groundbreaking research, and holds the key to unlocking solutions to some of the organization's most pressing challenges. Making effective use of your precious data assets drives profitability, marketing, manufacturing, innovation, and gives companies a competitive edge, or at times a cause for concern and embarrassment. By exploring and discussing strategies to ensure data accuracy, reliability, and integrity, we're also looking to help improve and enhance data governance practices by addressing challenges related to data quality, security, and compliance. Also by fostering collaboration by connecting like-minded people to discuss advancements in AI, data analytics, observability, and really to help improve both the production and development environments. And then finally, fostering stakeholders, because many of the presenters today have a great amount of experience in trusted data. Now, so what is the cost of bad data in an organization? Gartner indicates that there's $12.9 million spent every year, and the situation is likely to worsen as business operations and data complexity begins to increase. So if you think about that, I would think that that's a little bit understated. If you think about the 50 to the 100 million most companies spend in building out their data pipelines, building out the capability of doing data analytics. And then if that isn't used, all of that money and that effort is sunk cost if the result is poor data. So the old adage, if you build it, they'll come. Well, if it's poor data quality and not trusted data, they won't. In almost every study I've seen across the industry regarding adoption of data analytics, the major point as to why people don't adopt the analytics is the trust in data. So I have a question. If all that's true and we're moving down to this certain direction, why don't companies test the data journey with the same vigor as they do application testing? After all, aren't these data assets that we make important decisions on every bit as important as the applications that generate that data? Well, there's probably a number of reasons behind why software engineering and application testing has taken precedence over testing the data journey through the enterprise. First, software engineering has been around since 1962, and that discipline around that has evolved many times over the course of the years. Most recent advancement is the DevOps concept that was first coined in 2009. So software engineering, DevOps, that whole discipline has had a great head start over testing the data journey. With the advent of AI, big data, cloud, computing, data scientists, data engineering, and a wide variety of other technologies surrounding data, a new term was coined, and that was coined in 2014, and it's data ops. So data ops is shaping the data engineering much like DevOps did for software engineering. Data ops puts similar discipline around managing data and driving data engineers and data consumers together. At Datagaps, we believe that gap between testing the application and testing the data journey is rapidly closing. So with data ops gaining momentum, organizations are paying more attention to automating the test of the data journey. We have certainly seen an uptick in the types of questions we get at Datagaps. One of them is, can I use my existing DevOps environment that I've spent so much money in investing in and use that and connect my data ops capabilities and technologies into that and reuse that? I'm also seeing where people are migrating either on-prem to the cloud or from a legacy data base to a more modern data architecture, and they're looking at ways to improve that overall process. We also beginning to see an uptick in the number of people that are calling and asking about how can you help us with migrating from one cloud platform to the next. So many equate the trust in data issue as a data quality problem, but that's only one part of the issue. The industry has had data quality solutions for a number of years, and many would say that that problem has been getting worse, not better. We think the solution to the adoption of a discipline that must be applied through every stage of the data journey, multiple methods can be deployed to validate or test the data journey. One of the most recent concepts is through data observability. It's where people observe the production processes or the development processes, and this is a significant step in the right direction, but there's a lot more to testing the data journey. We also think in terms of report observability. So as you're generating graphs and reports and making important decisions based upon the things that are in your data analytics platform, what if you could grab the underlying data that is used to render those reports and graphs and compare that back to other reports and graphs and observe whether things are getting outside of the norm? There's also a need to do report metric comparisons back to the source of the truth. So grabbing a metric out of your report, tying that back to the warehouse, source of data, or maybe even all the way back to your production environment has become somewhat important as well. The objective of this Trusted Data Summit is to examine the root causes impacting the company's trust in data, identify what can be done, and offer examples of how companies are tackling this issue. It is my pleasure to introduce our first speaker, Raj from PwC. Raj is a senior technical leader at PwC with 20 years of IT delivery experience across large technology transformations. Raj worked closely with Capital One to deliver the best of breed solutions. He brings an in-depth experience in architecture, design, development, AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud, and also has the ability to build IT teams from the ground up. Raj has built large-scale payment, money movement, data integration, and machine learning capabilities for the multiple Fortune 100 enterprises. Raj has led top-performing teams of technical professionals in multiple organizations. designed, developed, and delivered multiple products from inception to large scale enterprise deployments. Extensive experience in deploying enterprise solutions for both on-prem and cloud. Welcome, Raj. We greatly appreciate you joining us on this summit, and I will turn this over to you.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. Good morning, everyone. I really want to thank the founders and the members of the Datagaps team for inviting me for this Trusted Data Summit. I really think it's a wonderful idea to just bring practitioners of like-minded thought together and exchange ideas. I really hope this is the first of the many to come, and wish the team the best of luck. With that said, today we wanted to just explore on the topic of data in the age of AI. I'm going to keep this to at like a higher level, kind of touch on themes, confluence of themes that we are seeing across data, AI, and kind of see what we are just foreseeing in terms of next 6 to 9 months in terms of how this is shaping up the industry. That's really the goal. I'll keep this less verbose to a point. I think we'll have some time towards the end for some questions and answers. Please feel free to leave comments on your chat. I think we have a way for us to getting those chat into questions or to us, and we'd be happy to kind of engage with you. With that said, today we wanted to explore the role of data in the age of AI. And as you can see, it's a very much an overloaded topic because each of those means very many things to us or as individuals, and certainly to our organizations that we are working in, right? So for the first part, I think we'll touch more on data, and then eventually we'll switch on the trends that we are observing in terms of AI and how we bring these two together. All right. This was about a year back. Many of you might have seen this picture. In fact, I think this was me sitting at reInvent, and when I saw this flashed, I was just compelled to just take a snapshot of this. Last reInvent, we saw this number flashed, and the idea that Amazon presented to us was this is the age of explosion, and that number is the expected sort of the next 5 years of growth in data, and the world is expected to double the amount of data that we have today. That was a theme, and I started researching, kind of figuring out what that number meant. Eventually, I think after meticulous counting of zeros, I figured that was 1,000 zettabytes, up until a point when somebody told me there is a new term that's coined for 1,000 zettabytes. It's called yottabyte. So it's interesting. Not, I would say, even a decade ago, we were thinking about zettabytes and yottabytes. At some point when I began my career, even touching a terabyte meant like scaling your organization in terms of data storage. And today they are minuscule numbers to compared to what we are experiencing, right? So as we are thinking or getting into this age of explosion, it's very clear that we need to have a data strategy. And doing rough order of math, if we were to store all of that data, right, in using our current means, that is roughly about $40 trillion for the entire world. And to put that into perspective, that's 50% of the global economic value. So that's how much data is front and central to our lives. And what is fairly important is, if this were to be true, this needs to be true. Data will be the bedrock of any organization strategy, and it'll continue to be the bedrock of not just an organization strategy, but an industry strategy. It'll continue to be shaping not just the industry strategy, but a country's approach and outlook, right? Yet, it is the most elusive construct in my mind, right? Every organization has a view around how they manage data, and every organization take on sort of what they're attempting to do within it. But if you just kind of take a high level and look at what's going on out there, the clarity and the purpose, I would say, largely eludes most of the organization because it's a very hard concept, right? To a point where even the fundamental question around whether data belongs to business, data belongs to technology, or data is its own thing within an enterprise needs to be figured out. And we've seen the organizational constructs that clarify all the three modalities in my mind. And I don't believe one is particularly the winning combination. I think it's very important for an organization to figure out, given their mission and vision, where does data fit in. Primarily not knowing that leads us to this, which I think Dave touched on: the cost of bad data. Right, having, we all know that quality over quantity is the anchoring premise, and any organizations that's purely going after quantity is just running a losing proposition. Like, take an example here. I think this just came to me recently. In fact, it's a conversation with Dave to say, hey, when we are in Zoom, there are many ways we can present ourselves. The first, on the left, oftentimes we all have been used to, is where our face is not clearly seen. Right, on the right, it's presented really well, and it just might be very simple as one versus another, but each of that have very profound effects on our organization. The left being an organization collecting bad data, the right being an organization figuring out their purpose and figuring out what the right data looks like, right? And what does that mean? Without getting into the specific technology implications, at the highest level, time and again, it's proven the cost of bad data can be pretty huge. Dave shared the number, but I'll share the themes. Absolutely, it results in financial losses, operational setbacks to a point where regulatory oversight is imposed on an organization, and ultimately, erosion of trust, not just with the public, but with the customers that an enterprise is dealing with. So it's fairly fundamental to figure out what is bad data and what is the right data approach for an organization. But it's also not just enough in my mind to sort of just figure out what the right data approach is, right? While if we put our heads together, we all can sort of anchor and rally around like what is not the right data looks like. That's a one-time fix. That's figuring out what the cost of bad data looks like. But even within figuring out like what is the right data, the various way in which how to optimize for it, like, and I'll use this as an example, the classic Heinz ketchup, right? It was not until decades later Heinz figured out the best way to serve their customers is to invert the common thinking, which is put the lid at the bottom of the ketchup, not at the top, right? And I would challenge today that this thinking applies very much to data as it applies to ketchup, right? Ultimately, data for data approach doesn't really enable business. Ultimately, figuring out how data enables business is just going to be key. And the CDO organizations have their work cut out. And what is also happening in the tools and the capabilities that comes along with that is just evolving at a drastic pace. There was a time when an organization had only their data about a customer, right? Today, that option has expanded. Enterprises can now partner with other like-minded enterprises. Enterprises can enter into syndication agreements to share their data sets with other enterprises to achieve a collective common goal. Hyperscalers like AWS, GCP, Azure are building data co-ops, are building data white rooms on how to bring enterprise data sets together to really figure out what is the right way to harness data, right? So at the end of the day, it's just not about figuring out what the cost of bad data is. It's also absolutely about figuring out cost of having not the right data strategy. The last but not the least, I'd like to think about data 720. And this is a classic case that I've run into. Pretty much when we run our campaign portfolio, when we really figure out our loyalty program, without naming the customer, I'll kind of talk about a broader case study that was done. This is a national retailer that's in the business of selling coffee and versions of coffee and tea. And they embarked on a journey to figure out who are the most loyal customers within their platform. They did a number of things and they got it mostly right, but they missed a segment. They were the cash paying customers, and they couldn't figure out who those anonymous cash paying customers were and how do they sort of reward them, right? Because pretty much most of the customers that they were rewarding were credit or digital. They had a digital footprint, or they used their loyalty program to kind of pay for coffee and stuff like that. So the creative approach was, okay, I'm going to partner with mobile data that was available. I'm going to kind of figure out at the time of somebody paying for a particular coffee, use the mobile data to kind of pinpoint who that customer might be, and ultimately start to provide some loyalty program to them. It's a very interesting proposition. Like organizations that just go after their own data set to kind of figure that out will never be able to figure out that segment, right? It's really only through a data 720 approach, as I call it, because organizations will only see the 360 version of a customer that the customer wishes to show them. But there is another 360 view of that customer that the customer is showing outside of the organization. So until we bring these two 360s together, I don't believe and organizations will fully succeed in figuring out what the right data strategy is. So that's a very finer point, but equally an important point for organizations to kind of figure out the role of data and role of not just having a bad, eliminating a bad data strategy, but having a right data strategy, as I would like to call it. And the other one I'd like to just hit it is, not all data an organization creates is equal, right? Because we do believe, and everybody agrees, in the age of data explosion, the relevance of the data that's getting created over a period of time loses its value, as in different data that we create decays at different points in time, right? Take, for example, an organization sending a verification text or a email to validate a customer login, or an organization sending a campaign email to a customer with an offer, and the enterprise serving a monthly banking statement to their customer. If you think about this, we store the text or that email or that statement more or less in perpetuity. Right? Only a few organizations really have clarifying purpose around this data and they have figured it out, but others kind of store it in perpetuity. That has resulted in what I would call the born again data lakes and cloud, and they are having a massive explosion of data, right? So it's very important to kind of figure out the ephemerality of data, and ephemeral data sets exist within an organization. And how do we capture that? How do we store that? How do we extract value? And eventually, how do we sunset that data is going to be equally important for an organization that's really figuring out the overall data premise for that enterprise. Organizations and enterprises that are not having a place for ephemeral data will continue to just grow and explode in terms of their data footprint. Not only that, will eventually lead into sort of a decay of the data footprint, but eventually it increases the cost as well. And the last theme I'd lead with is it's going to be more than speed and scale. While we are going to solve a number of issues, I love the fact a very senior, well-known security expert, Bruce Schneider, once said, data is the pollution problem of the information age. Protecting privacy is the environmental challenge. So this is very important for organizations that are pivoting or having a good data strategy is the role of customer data within an organization, and how they manage for privacy is just going to be key, because over the last few years, the pendulum of data ownership residing with the enterprise is swinging closer towards the customer. We could see that in a lot more certain form in terms of right to forget in GDPR in Europe, the CCPA in California, and lately a very compelling directive from the White House on how an organization can play or use data for the purposes of AI, the purposes of kind of protecting user interest and all of that. So that transparency is just going to be key, and all enterprises are expected to keep privacy front and center of how they are solving for data itself. So these are number of themes around data, and we all have hit all of this in many different forms. While they are still true, there is one overarching use case that I believe is changing the landscape of how an enterprise or an organization should treat data. And I'll tell this starting with an anecdote, right? Like FANG, which we all have come to sort of realize as the epicenter of world's innovation, right? If you look at the last few years, I childishly just say that they were more enamored in renaming what they were called, and I believe they're called Mama, than sort of staying true to the purpose, which is disruption at its core. And December of last year, a little known nonprofit, not for profit organization, which I believe is shifting, made a dent in the universe. They released something which has amazing amount of attraction in terms of user adoption, which is OpenAI. So the point being, I don't believe innovation is front and center, owned by certain organizations just because in the past they did really, really well. It is still the world where somebody who's got an idea can figure out and they can create that dent in that universe. And we are seeing that time and time again. And I don't believe this is the last iteration of it. But absorbing that trend of what has happened in the last year, it's very interesting for me to see how the next maybe years are going to unravel. This was the first dev day of OpenAI, closer to about a year since they rolled out ChatGPT, and some of the numbers continue to be staggering. Right? If you all remember the mobile revolution that we have Steve Jobs to thank for, started in the first decade of this century, took about 4 years to gain a million apps or million developers in their platform. Today, in less than 8 months, OpenAI has little over 2 million developers on their platform. Just compare and contrast what the rate of adoption of AI is compared to the last known revolution, which is mobile app. So you can clearly see we are today is the slowest in terms of technological revolution as it's ever going to be, because tomorrow is just going to be unbelievable, and that has proven in the last decade, and that'll hold true for the next decade as well. Right? Not just that, in a period of 8 months, 92% of large organizations has made AI a board level priority. It's very evident that AI is just going to be the future, and every organization is really figuring out what is their role in it. And it just continues to be more than a passing fad, because little over 100 million users are still traversing that platform today. These are staggering numbers for any platform that's out there. But when we think about this was a not-for-profit, little unknown, today garnering this, it clearly shows the power of what we are about to deal with. In the last 8 months, we've evolved from large language model to multimodal, which was very clear, even from the prior speeches that I've heard. The evolution of model will be accompanied by the evolution of data. The data explosion that we talked about is just going to be not in the more traditional format. Most of the data that we are going to acquire is going to be semi-structured or unstructured. It's going to be more audio than text. It's going to be more video than text. The question now is, how is an organization or an enterprise going to keep up with a multimodal AI age and the data set that's going to be also sort of multi-form in nature. And today we have some of the more powerful models that are out there. GPT-4, which is by far, I think, the most powerful large language model. But in a short period of time, a number of other models have come into play. Right, DALI 3, one could claim, is a good image model, but there are open source models that are really competing with DALI 3 in image synthesis and so on and so forth, because image synthesis is a little bit more mature time frame than large language model, and that are given open source to catch up quite a bit, right? Which I'll touch on as a theme later as well. But that said, I want to just say, hey, this is not getting away from us. We have been here before, and perhaps not all of us have been here before. This happened around the revolution of refrigeration, right? Like when refrigeration kind of came into being, it actually transformed the way we were living our life, where we were going to store our life, store our products, so on and so forth. It's a simple question I'll just put out there. But if you look through the 20, 30, 40 years of, or maybe 50 years of revolution around refrigeration, it is very clear it wasn't GE, it wasn't Kelvinator, it wasn't Frigidaire that actually benefited from that innovation. I might ask, who do you think was the most beneficiary when it came to this innovation? But I'll also just share it. It is believed that Coca-Cola was the number one company that benefited from the age of refrigeration, right? And beers and other products also benefit from it. So the key thing is, while AI is maturing, there is a place for everybody. There is a place for use cases. There is a place for everyone to figure out what the next Coca-Cola is going to be, as an individual, as an enterprise. It really bottoms down to the organization, the culture that is going to give the permission to go figure out what is our Coca-Cola that we have to bring to market in the age of AI. Last but not the least on this topic, I'll probably touch is all's not lost, because everybody I see lately have been pushing towards, like, I got to get into an OpenAI or a LLM bandwagon, which is fair. I do think every organization, every enterprise has to increase their IQ, but it's equally important not to lose your originality, demonstrated by that single car that's probably traveling in its own lane, has something they have figured out, as opposed to the rest who are trying to merge into this open AI craze that's out there. So what is it that you and your organization trying to accomplish? What is the purpose? I think finding that is going to be key, and it probably will help you figure out whether you're going to zig while others are zagging in this race. Right? Case in point, 6 months, or not even 6 months, 2 months after this revolutionary release of large language models, something very profound happened. And this is a public paper that's out there, which you all can look at. This was published by one of the chief scientists at Google. They analyzed the evolution of the new large language models. While ChatGPT, GPT-4, and GPT 3.5 got released, what was interesting is what we see on the left. 3 open source models came into market, thanks to, of course, Meta releasing the base model. 3 iterations of open source kind of really just started to gain people's attention, because these were models that were produced at 1/10 of the price that the enterprise took to produce either Bard or GPT-3 and 4. And what OpenAI open source was doing is they were infusing tremendous amount of innovation into this process. Right? Some of the problems that the enterprises were trying hard to solve was retraining these large models from scratch. Guess what? open source world, the world figured out how to do micromodel training, use a methodology called LoRa, which was, of course, a contribution from Microsoft, but the application of it was at a much faster pace done by the open source world, right? And they also proved that training smaller models and releasing it could be a lot more viable and a significant business proposition than waiting for large language model upgrades as well. The last thing which I think Dave touched when it comes to data is, as in the case of large language model or in the case of micro model, data quality scales better than data size, right? An organization that is purely going after data size will miss completely an important component and important dimension, which is what is the right data set that they have to be using to train this, right? And there are innovation that's happening that's not constrained to an open source world because of licensing and so on and so forth, and thanks to some organizations that are releasing models for research purposes, I think that's driving a ton of innovation. And we are seeing that in the form of personal devices running large language models, in the form of low resolution sort of models that are running on the mobile phone. And these are amazing milestones that we are seeing in a short period of time, and these will have humongous implications in how organizations are able to bring, like for instance, models on edge, decisions on edge, like very important constructs that are very specific to organization, right? So those are I think I want to say some broader observations. And the last one I'll leave you with is this is not new, and I'll tell the story. 96 Caspro 96 Caspro won against Deep Blue. 97 Caspro lost to Deep Blue, right? And up until that point in time, nobody had beaten Caspro at the way in which Deep Blue beat him, right? This actually put Caspro into kind of a depression, but into a deep thinking. And he started to wonder, how is it the cognitive ability of a human could be superseded by a machine that's able to think better and faster than a human that is built for this purpose, right? Although the infrastructure of Deep Blue is very different from what we are seeing today, but the framing was the same, right? Can machines be better than human, right? So Caspro actually initiated a freeform chess, and he actually played 6 months later with in pair. He played with a Bulgarian player, and the Bulgarian player chose a machine, and Caspro chose a machine. They both played 2-on-2. In a one-on-one setting, Caspro beat the Bulgarian player historically, but when they played 2-on-2, they both drew each other. And ever since that, this has become a very common advanced chess competition. It's called a freeform competition. Caspro has been observing this, and he wrote this. The teams of human plus machine dominated even the strongest computers and the strongest super chess players, right? The chess masters. The chess machine Hydra, which is a chess specific supercomputer like Deep Blue, was no match for a human player who's strong enough with a relatively weak laptop. Human strategic guidance combined with tactical acuity of a computer was overwhelming. Ultimately, the point is there is cognitive aspects and there are computational aspects that we face in the real world, and the best combination is a combination of a machine and the human that are solving for the computational deficit and the cognitive aspect. And the reason why a stronger player with a weak machine or an average player with an average machine was able to beat all the chess masters and the strongest computers was the weaker machine was able to compute sort of from an large number of possible options to a limited set of options, and then and somebody who's an expert in that area was able to pick cognitively the best next move for that position, right? So it is a proven construct, and it was very reinforcing when I look back to these themes that we are at that juncture in my mind, and we believe we'll be not paired to compete with machines, but we'll be paired to complement them, and we have a place, and the machines have a place in the future that's about to come. And what I mean by that is, with the age of AI begins the age of intimacy. And it's important for us to achieve the true intimacy, right? Where organizations can truly touch their customers. There needs to be a proposition which brings AI, data, and people together. Organizations that do not bring these three pieces together in a more seamless way are not going to be the ones that are going to survive in the next few years. Thank you. Those are my prepared remarks. I think I'm on time, but I'll leave you with this quote, which has stuck to me for a while. This is a very renowned scientist, Dr. Kai-Fu Lee. He said, when it comes to AI, most people have no idea, and many people have the wrong idea. And my 2 cents to everybody is, it's we should all recognize it's a dawn of a new age, and we should all act now, both from a personal standpoint and from an enterprise standpoint, because I see no reason not to start now. What is important is everybody has an opportunity to raise their IQ, and it's fairly important for us to educate ourselves on this journey. With that, I'll pause. I'll turn it over to Dave.
Hi, Raj. Hey, thank you so much. That was enlightening, and I got a couple of, actually more than a couple of really good thoughts from this. I love the quote that you had that says data quality is scales better than data size. I read an article not too long ago where organization was building their data model, their AI model, and they were getting large amounts of data from their customers. And one of the customers gave them an enormous amount of information, and it was millions of dollars in building this model. Well, as it turned out, the data was wrong, right? So quality does beat data size every time. We have a couple of questions from the audience. One is from Nareen, and he says, how do you see enterprises adopting generative AI given the compliance and data privacy requirements?
Yep, yep. It's a front and center topic that every enterprise is grappling with, and it is the one I would say the most amount of focus, which is governance, and how do you build a framework that is in line with the privacy and also the compliance needs for the enterprise. What is fulfilling to me is our government stepping in, right? They actually issued a pretty strong directive on expectations of organizations that are expected to play in generative AI. It is by far the most direct guidance that anybody has ever provided. What is also very compelling to me is the industry leaders have formed together a consortium, and they are starting to hit on these heavy topics. It is more than an organizational need. I think questions of citizens' role in it, the questions of citizen kind of jumping in and figuring out what is it that as a country we should be investing in, is all being brought to bear. Right now, the important thing is to lean in. Every organization is making good progress in that area. For instance, now ChatGPT has a ChatGPT Enterprise version that's out there that is being tested by a lot of different organizations. Even my employer has a version of it. It's one of the we are one of the leading organizations to kind of try it and test it. But there is more to happen in this space, because there's tremendous amount of focus being put by a lot of governing bodies that I think is very important.
Yeah, I think sort of a follow-on question to that. You touched on this, where AI can help you with your job with a lot of different things. But how do you think AI is going to replace, augment, supplant people? I'm sure you get this question quite often.
quite often, Dave. And I look for more industry leaders kind of like where their heads at, right? And uh, I one thing is workforce that is enabled with AI is going to be a workforce that's going to survive this transition is an overarching theme that everybody agrees on, right? Because every role that we see in some shape or form is going to be touched by this absolutely phenomenal transformative capability that's out there. So the key thing is investing in upskilling yourself is the best thing everyone can do, and that absolutely applies for everybody, including me. I even saw a research pitch which said everything largely a consultant can do, generative AI can do, which quote unquote was telling that Raj, my job is numbered out there, which I don't, which I think is true in two parts, right? One, I think if I believe I'm going to be doing my role in the same way I've done in the last decade, I think I'm up for a surprise. But there is sort of a wake up call in that, like if I'm educating myself, if I'm kind of front and center with the evolution of it, I do think, given our role in the industry, we will continue to be doing amazing consulting work, amazing transformative work with our industry partners, because now we understand how to leverage this capability. So I do think the one thing that is true is workforce that is fully enabled and fully upskilled around AI will be the workforce that will transform itself into the next era.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think I heard a term the other day and it just sort of stuck with me. And the term was AI hallucination. And what they really were talking about is AI will generate a tremendous amount of concepts and ideas and thoughts and stuff. And part of it is just hallucination, right? It has no bearing. And of course, it's getting better and better and better. But it still takes the human to take a look at what has been generated and go through fact and really put it in the right perspective. So that sort of hit home with me. Hey, I think we have time for one other question. And I jotted this down earlier. You know, it seems that with all the data available now to us, how do you weed out the valuable data from the noise, and how do you bring that to the business and help them understand, you know, the whole process behind that?
Yep. Dave, this is a fundamentally important posturing question. It's not a technology question per se to me.
Mm-hmm.
In this world of AI and the data that should get accompanied with it, we cannot do this to business. We have to do this with business, right? An organization that makes this a business priority will be the organizations that truly, in my mind, evolve and scale. At the end of the day, we might technically know what is and how to build it. Business will intrinsically know what matters to them. So in every set of the conversation, whether to use a particular data set versus whether to not use a particular data set needs to be a conversation that needs to be had with business, and that requires business participating and increasing their IQ on AI. If they choose to continue doing what they are doing without upskilling themselves from an AI perspective, they are going to shy away from having this conversation, which I feel is also a losing proposition. But organizations that collectively brings them up to speed on what is it that they are doing from an AI perspective and sits down and figure out what is the right data that they would need will be the ones that are truly will I think prevail in my mind. And I can give a lot of examples. In fact, I'll just give this one example. Lately there is an organization which is trying to figure out what is the way to underwrite the best like loans for customers, right? And this organization has tremendous amount of data, and they started talking to business, and the business with business they figured out, we believe customers who charge their cell phones on a nightly basis consistently are more prone to paying their loans than customers who do not charge their cell phones on a nightly basis. Again, it's a totally from the left field fact. But this organization went and actually realized that they brought in a third party data set into it for their underwriting purposes. And lo and behold, their underwriting was a lot more accurate. Why? Because they did take that time and sit down and have that conversation with business around how to think about data. So when I say quality over quantity, it's not a technical thing. When I say figuring out the right data set, it's not a data centric thing. It is really the purpose behind what all of this serves and why business is going to be the one that's going to say, hey, what matters to them.
All right. Hey, Raj, it was our pleasure having you. We appreciate you participating. That concludes this session.